Hey everybody. So this is where I talk a little bit about a game that I'm currently playing. Now, keep in mind when you watch this video that these aren't meant to be definitive reviews or commentaries on the games. They're just meant to give you a little taste of them and give me an opportunity to create some content and talk about games that I'm actively playing. And as you can see here, this is Darksiders 2, which is a quite large game that I'll probably be playing for quite some time and may even do some more videos of. But I wanted to kick things off with this because it's a game that's in my active queue and one that I'm working my way through and one that I think will be a little bit different and interesting relative to some of the other games that I've been covering lately. So let's jump in here and see what's what. So as you're going to see once the game loads up here, I'm partway through this campaign and I'm level 4, still pretty early on, just a few hours in. I think I've done maybe 2 boss fights, a couple of major quest story type items, but I'm still pretty early on in the game. And from what I understand, it's a pretty long game, so I would guesstimate that maybe this is like the first fifth or 20% of the game maybe that I'm in here, but let's just jump in.
The journey so far. The cauldron was cold, but the horsemen rekindled its fire, and in the hearts of the makers,
one thing I really like about this game is that if you've been away from it for a little while and you jump in, it always gives you this story summary, which basically brings you back up to speed on kind of what's been going on in the game and what your current objective is, and kind of just helps ease you back into the experience because, you know, in a very thoughtful fashion, the developers have kind of realized, hey, maybe some of the people who are interested in playing this game don't have the time to sit down and play it all in 1 or 2 sittings. Maybe they're going to play it, you know, an hour here, an hour there. And so having a feature like that, I think, is pretty cool. Now, I was a huge fan of the original Darksiders. I thought it was one of the most underrated, kind of underappreciated games of the year that it came out. And I've been kind of lobbying for and championing that game quite a bit since its release. So I was very excited to get my hands on this game, and I will say for the most part so far it has not disappointed me. You know, it still has those really tight, precise, kind of action-oriented controls. As you might guess here, I'm playing with an Xbox 360 controller to really you know, make the best use of the control potential that this game has to offer. I highly recommend doing that. But you can see here, you know, there are enemies about to deal with. Now, kind of unlike the first game where you had a lot of light and heavy comboing, the X and the Y buttons in this game are actually 2 distinctly separate weapons. So you notice that as I kind of combo in and out of X and Y, I'm actually switching weapons in addition to switching attack styles. This is slightly different from the original game where, you know, you had some special weapons like the gauntlet and control like spinning blade thing. But for the most part, you're kind of rocking the primary weapon and using different attack intensities. The other thing about this version of the game that's noteworthy is dodging is introduced really early on and kind of plays a major role in things. You may have noticed that these guys are kind of just continuing to respawn here, getting up in my face and bothering me. So what I want to do is basically just get on up away from them rather than trying to deal with them because they're just going to keep coming. And I think in the first game there were some instances of that where, like, you get into situations where it was just in your best interest to avoid the enemies or get away from them instead of attacking them. I just got access to this gun, which is pretty cool. It kind of has a auto-locking mechanic that I like. Kind of pull the right trigger and fire that bad boy at will. I believe in this scenario, I'd played a little bit of this sequence before I stopped playing last time because the save was obviously back there where I started. And I believe at a certain point I kill all those guys and stop coming. Dope! It's just me not paying attention to my health. But this gives me an opportunity to demonstrate how generous the checkpointing system can be in the game. So as you can see, I'm right back here where I started, and again, that's why the save games work the way they do. You probably noticed when I came in here that the game started me in that same position based on my save. So the saves, they basically will let you save anywhere you want to, but that's a bit of a problem, I think, in the game, right? Like, gives me an opportunity to demonstrate. So, like, I feel like I should just be able to jump up right there. Like, he's very clearly able to make that distance, but won't grab that ledge because it's not the particular part of the level that they want you to traverse. And I think, you know, that's kind of a point that I wanted to make about the game. This gives me an opportunity to do that in a very literal fashion. That, like, if I have a major complaint about this version of the game so far, it's that sometimes it's very unclear as to where you're supposed to be going because there aren't a lot of visual indicators on the kind of golden path you're supposed to traverse. Like, they do some little things like if you click in the left stick,
see what you can find,
and hold it for a second, you have this crow companion who will go and fly and show you theoretically where you're supposed to be going. But you notice he like flew off down in that direction, right? I'll go down here. Let's see if I can go this way. But I think what's probably going to happen is, I get here and I can't actually interact with this door. So like, the game kind of misleads you sometimes in terms of like where it is that you're supposed to be going and what you're supposed to be doing. And so like, I like the idea of the crow companion mechanic. It's a cool idea, but I feel like it's a little bit rough around the edges in terms of how they've implemented it here. You see I'm trying to trigger it, and of course the guys are wailing on me as I do that. Again, because they just keep spawning, there's no way for me to really get away from them, except to kind of retreat up here where they don't come. Kind of annoying. So, but now that I'm here and I'm out of combat and I'm away from them, you can see again, there's my crow guy. He's telling me to go over there, but I can't actually do anything over there. So that's a bit of a problem. So much like in the first game, you have access to quick potions. So like here I have a healing potion that I can press left on the D-pad and activate that, and that'll just slowly bring up your health. If I want to pop another one of those, I can get basically all the way back up to full health. So that's a nice mechanic. You can kind of plop those on the fly in combat and have a dedicated button for them so that they're easy to get to. But let me go in here and try to make a more serious effort at clearing this area out, and then I will explain some of the other things that are going on in the game. You get the air combos like you do in a lot of other character action games. You kind of jump with the appropriate button and just go crazy on dudes. Like much like in the first game, the kind of moment-to-moment combat where you're fighting like certain scrub or introductory enemies is pretty cool, and it feels pretty fun, pretty visceral. Generally pretty positive. Like, I think the really direct, precise controls you have with the 3D controller are very much in effect here. They feel very good and responsive. I pretty much have nothing but good to say about like how the general feel of the control goes. I think where the game has been running into problems for me so far is with level design to a certain extent. Like, I think some of the level design just isn't quite as clear and as polished as it was in the first game. Now, don't get me wrong, the first game had issues too in that regard, but I always felt like in that game, if I wasn't able to find my way in it, it was because I wasn't paying attention enough to the cues that they were giving me. Whereas in this game, I feel like sometimes the cues they give you actually end up throwing you off or making things more difficult than they otherwise would be. So that's a bit of a concern for me in these early stages of the game, at least. This looks very highly suspicious. Okay, I guess I can come in here. This seems like a place where something bad's about to happen to me, if I had to guess. Oh hey, I think I've been here before. No, this just looks kind of similar to another area of the map that I'd seen. Okay, so this wide open area here should give me an opportunity to demonstrate this, which is basically if you hold both bumpers on the controller, you can summon your horse. In most wide open areas, that will just work, and if it's not going to work, he'll make a comment like, this is no place for a horse, or something like that to indicate that it's just not available to you. But it's really cool in the sense that you get these big open areas to traverse early in the game, and you have the horse at your disposal almost immediately. So you're not like trudging through vast open areas on foot, having to deal with every enemy you come across. You can kind of just blaze on the horse to where you're trying to get to for the most part, and deal with whatever enemies you still have agged when you reach your destination. You know, I'm kind of forming some opinions about this game as I'm playing it, and I find that my enjoyment of it is kind of fluctuating a bit. Like sometimes I'm really into it and really enjoying it quite a bit, and then other times things will come up that just kind of vex me. Okay, so here's like there's a situation where I just got to a point where the horse is no longer viable for whatever reason. Like something about that visually would have indicated that to me. It seems like I got to the point where they didn't want me to have the horse anymore, so now it's gone. But before I get killed. Seriously, you are. Oh! And again, you know, as with the Counter-Strike video I did earlier in the week, trying to do this while you're commenting on it can be a little tricky. Like, I'm not paying quite as much attention here as I should be to my gameplay. I will say, you know, having been playing this game for a while without doing the commentary, it's probably not as difficult as I'm making it seem by dying repeatedly. It's just that I'm not giving it my full concentration, and this is a game where, you know, it's going to punish you if you don't do things the way that it wants you to in terms of combat and such. So like if you're not blocking, if you're not dodging, if you're not, you know, using the appropriate weapons and combos for the enemies that you're fighting against, you're oftentimes going to run into problems. So let's see, when I cross this threshold, if it boots me off. Yeah, so like that's just an event, I guess. Or something like that. So this gives me an opportunity to show off some of my special abilities here. So I've got this ability mapped to left bumper A. You can map your special pretty much however you want regarding the left bumper. So I wanted that to be left bumper B, left bumper Y. I could do that dynamically. And that's basically just a summon that lets me bring out a couple of ghouls to fight on my behalf. If I have, I believe it's Rage or Wrath or something like that is their magic kind of mechanic. You see those guys that they'll light everybody up and trying to basically there are two diverging skill trees, and I've actually spent points in both to kind of get a sense of what they're about. So the alternative to that initial power is this teleport slash, which I currently have mapped to right bumper left. This guy's almost like a mini boss. Oh my goodness. So crazy. Stop being so crazy. I just need to... So this gives me an opportunity to illustrate another kind of issue that I have with this game. Unlike in the first Darksiders where you were playing war and you were kind of almost portrayed as like an invincible, badass kind of guy who could just stomp and destroy anything that you would come across. Like, the way I kind of recollect the combat in the first Darksiders was that, you know, you might have situations where it got a little bit difficult at times, but basically your character was very empowered in the sense that you'd kind of go headlong into combat and just kind of wail on dudes and combo the hell out of them until they were dead. And, you know, you'd take damage and you'd be in jeopardy at times, but for the most part, you could basically plow your way through large swaths of that game. One thing that I've noticed about this version of the game is that since you're playing as a different character here, Death, he's a lot more subtle. He's a lot more about avoidance and like setting up attacks in kind of clever ways or non-traditional engagements, where it's like if you go toe-to-toe with a lot of the creatures that come across in this game, you're going to get rocked a little bit. And you know, that's fine. You know, it's a different play style, and it's representing kind of like a change in the mechanics of the game, and I'm totally fine with that. But okay, so this is just weird, right? Like, I just rode past that point where that ambush had occurred like twice, and now it didn't happen that time. So let's see if I come back this way, if that event triggers again. Yeah, so there. So just because I ran in a slightly, or I rode in a slightly different direction there, I didn't trigger that event, so you could have like a very different experience riding through there depending on the trajectory that you take through the environment, which is a little bit of a bummer if you ask me. I mean, it seems like that's something that was intended to happen, to be able to go through that part of the game and not have that happen randomly. But, so as you can see, like, you know, these guys are tough, man. Like, if I go toe-to-toe with that guy, he's gonna just kind of wreck me when he does that big swing. So I've really got to try to just avoid him, you know, to a certain extent. And this is how a lot of the boss fights have been going so far in the game. Like the boss that I did before getting to this part of the game was like a dodge fest. Like, I had to dodge like a madman constantly to stay away from his main attacks, because if he'd connect with them, he would just drill me, like quite literally, and take huge chunks away from my health bar. You know, so you can get in here, get some hits in, but you gotta be careful to not linger too long. So you only got so many shots before it has to recycle or reload. The other thing that's kind of annoying is, like, this guy doesn't seem to have a health bar. Like, clearly he's some kind of badass, like, almost mini-boss-like character, but I'm getting no real indication of, like, how badly I'm hurting him, or whether he's, like, close to death, or if I should be running away from him, or what the deal is here. Vague. And I guess that's, you know, indicative of what I was talking about before, but, like, there's just certain aspects of the game that don't seem as fleshed out or as polished as they did in the first one. Now, that's not to say, you know, the game doesn't have good things going for it, and it's not fun, but I kind of find myself wondering if maybe I made a mistake, you know, deciding to play this on normal. I feel like the atmosphere and the story and kind of the setting and all that stuff is a big part of what's really, interesting about this game. Wow, I can't believe. Oh man, that was crazy. I mean, am I wrong in thinking that was a little bit crazy to just have that as like a random thing as you're riding down the road there? I mean, seriously, game? Okay, so apparently it's getting close to that structure that's dismounting me from the horse. So I guess because I went out here to the left a little more last time, that kind of kept me away from it.
Go.
Let's see if our little bird friend is going to be helpful here. Hey buddy, where you at?
Dust? What do you see?
I feel like if I had designed this, I would have had it so that when you click the left stick, he automatically just appears, like, say, on your character's shoulder, and then just flies off in whatever direction he's supposed to be indicating. Like, the fact that he just kind of randomly appears in the sky somewhere is a little bit not cool, because if you're not looking in the right direction, you're not necessarily going to spot what he's trying to indicate to you. I don't know. I'm still kind of on the fence about this game. I'm still kind of making up my mind about it. I had such a good time. Really, really enjoyed the first one, almost from beginning to end. Like, there were a couple boss fights that were a little rough. There were a couple puzzles or areas in the game that were, maybe a little poorly designed, for lack of a better term. But, for the most part, it was a really solid, consistent game. And stuff like this, like just the way, okay, they're letting me ride the horse in here, but the mechanic of like getting him around these corners and staying on this path and getting where I'm trying to get, it's a little rough. It's just not quite. Like, I get that they're trying to have the horse have momentum, so you can't just turn on a dime or whatever, but it still feels a little odd. I'm actually in a little bit of a health situation here. I'm kind of reluctant to get into it with these things, especially knowing from having seen them before that they're probably likely to just keep respawning. I'm kind of going to just try to avoid them, to be honest. There's kind of no point in killing them if they're just going to keep coming. Hey buddy. Let me try to kill them, I guess. But they're gonna just bang. I would have liked a few more shots there. And maybe that's an upgrade. Maybe that's something where, once you dump some more points in, you have more bullets per reload. But it feels like you're not getting quite enough for the amount of enemies that they're presenting you with. It's like it's a bit of a balance issue, to be honest. And again, like, I think part of it is I just have to keep adapting my mindset a little, because I'm so used to playing we're so comfortable with the way that War played in the first game that I'm still kind of getting used to this whole idea of, oh, I really need to be dodging a lot and, like, avoiding their attacks as much as I am landing my own hits. I guess, like, just to me, that mechanic is inherently less interesting. Like, I guess if I were in the right frame of mind for it, or the right mood for it, I'd be more into it. But it just kind of feels like they're just making you work harder to get to the same end that you were in the previous game. So you probably noticed that there are indicators on the mini-map down here, and that's kind of what I'm trying to check out right now. I think that indicator is supposed to be like the crow showing you that there's something special here. So here's another little kind of minor niggly gripe. I really hate the way they do this lighting highlight on a lot of things. Like, it just looks really poor. I'm just saying. Like, the way that light bounces off of that wall and kind of traverses in that, like, globular kind of sloppy looking highlight, like that shouldn't be in a game of this caliber. I think that's just poorly done, if you ask me. So it looks like, maybe if I drop down here, I thought I saw like a sub-ledge there, but I guess I'm just meant to go up here. I'm just kind of mashing the A button to like keep vaulting up onto that stuff. And you know, it kind of in a very Prince of Persia-ish way, they usually give you the critical path on these traversal sections where they have like certain you know, graphical cues like these ledges that are very obviously climbable, or those little you know, little nodules sticking out of the wall that you can kind of use to springboard up to traverse further. And that stuff's fairly consistent. Like, that's not the stuff I'm really complaining about when it comes to, you know, marking my path and that sort of thing. I think for me it's just stuff more about like the general look and feel of the levels, and not really feeling like they are you know, properly indicated, you know, just for general traversal of the level, like beyond the special options. So here's another mechanic that's been getting introduced a lot, is these boulders that you can free up, and then you roll them into a particular spot, and that activates that spot and usually like opens a door or something like that. So what I'm going to assume here, and again, I should probably mention that I'm clicking the right stick in and out to toggle that aiming mode. So, I mean, all this stuff is covered just like it was in the first game, very well, in terms of like in-game tutorials, where it's like when you get to a part of the game where you need to use, you know, aiming, it'll just throw up a prompt and say, hey, click the right stick to aim. So, you know, if I'm kind of glossing over stuff like that, just know that it's because, you know, the game generally does a pretty good job of just letting you know that stuff. And that's something that's kind of a carryover from the first one. It was pretty good in that regard as well. Okay, so usually those can roll into a crevice like that, and bada bing, bada boom, we have access to a new thing. So one thing that you'll notice if you played the first game is that you'll get to these points like where you have to perform an action on a door or a chest or something like that, and whereas like the original character War would like grab something and rip it or like kick it open or whatever, like Death is again more subtle. He's all about using like his powers and magic and stuff like that. So that's just like a little, some kind of a flavor thing. Like, it doesn't impact gameplay at all, but it's just like, again, them trying to establish this character as being different, you know, from the one in the first one. And again, you know, cool. I'm into it. I'm not against change by any means. I will say, you know, my initial feeling about the game is that I don't know that I'm embracing Death as a character as much as I did War initially. Like, I guess it just doesn't speak to me as a character as much as the previous one did. But I could certainly see it growing on me, like especially as I unlock new abilities and I get more, you know, access to more capabilities on the character. And, you know, stuff like that's super cool, right? Oh, so one thing I should mention is I went into the options in the game and turned on auto looting. So like normally, whenever you go to loot in the game, it'll prompt you whether or not you want to pick it up, and you can hit the B button to do that. But with auto looting on, like as long as you have room in your inventory, he'll just automatically pick stuff up, and I'm a fan of that. I'm just rather deal with that manually, especially in like a combat situation where like you're running through an area and you're killing dudes, they're dropping stuff, and you don't want to have to like backtrack through the area when you're all done to pick up your loots. It's kind of nice to just have it automatically handle that. Give it a little teleport strike. You know, so again, you know, the abilities are super cool from what I've seen so far. Like, I really like the ghoul summon. Teleport strike is kind of neat, if maybe a little more selectively useful. like in retrospect, I probably would have just gone with another talent tree and just emphasized on, you know, summoning those ghouls. Actually, let me just pull up the interface for a moment, and I'll show you some of the menus real quick. So basically, you have, you know, your primary weapon that you're using, and it'll show you like the comparative. You know, like, is this better or worse than what I'm using? You can see here, like, I could actually use this new primary, which is slightly better than what I've got, so I might as well go in and equip that. Let's see, I've been picking up some new secondaries as well. So I've been holding on to basically everything that I've been picking up so far, because you do have fairly copious inventory at your disposal, and from what I understand, at some point in the game you gain the ability to feed weapons to other weapons and make them more powerful. So I've basically just been trying to hold on to everything so that, you know, A, when I get to these levels, I'll be able to use these ones that I've picked up that are inaccessible to me right now, and B, you know, I just want to have as many weapons to feed into the special weapons as I can whenever that opportunity presents itself. So there's that. You've got, you know, gear. Obviously I haven't taken the time to gear up in a little while, which is why it's giving me these little star indicators, you know, letting me know that there's new pieces of gear in these various slots. Again, that's an upgrade, so it's kind of silly not to use it. Let's see. So that's that. You know, it's kind of an action RPG-ish kind of vibe almost. You know, you've got, like, again, here's the skill tree, so here's where I did like the slash and you know, teleport slash, and on this side over here is my ghoul summoning. As you can see, I've been dumping my extra points into here now, just because I've the second tier basically lets your guys have more health. So as soon as I saw that, I'm like, well, if I'm going to be bringing these guys out on a regular basis anyway, why not make them healthier? It just makes sense. So there's that. Map is serviceable. I think I liked the map in the first game maybe a little better. It was just a little... I liked the more top-down, like, literal map view. Like, they're kind of going with this isometric, kind of cockeyed angle view, which works. It functions. It's fine. You know, I can certainly read and interpret this map just fine. There's also, like, the overworld map, which is like a more textured kind of thing that kind of reminds me of something you'd see like from Lord of the Rings or something along those lines. And then also here's where you like would toggle your quest text and, like, you know, refresh yourself on what you're supposed to be doing and that sort of thing. But you know, all basic standard stuff that you would expect. Here it keeps like track of all your various stats and accomplishments for those who are interested in stuff like that, or maybe if you're chasing achievements or that sort of thing, you know, it's handy to have that. And then your move list, you know, obviously stuff that you are going to want to know about. Needless to say, the combat or the combo system here is not exactly rocket science. A lot of it's just timing and kind of knowing when to mash the appropriate button, you know, for the weapon that you're trying to use. As a general rule, the weapons you equip on X are going to be faster and less damage. The weapons you equip on Y will be generally slower and more damage. But I've like the current scenario that I have right now, I actually have a pretty fast weapon on Y. So it is possible, like, if you want to just shred, you know, you can go with quick weapons on both attack buttons. So this is again representing like special abilities and creatures that I have access to. Obviously my horse and my crow buddy and my gun that I got for completing the last major quest that I did. So I mean that's really the interface, you know, in a nutshell. I mean that's just the back button on the 360 controller. You know, you still have your pause menu where you can resume and save at any time, but again, as I mentioned before, saving is checkpoint based, so it's not going to save you at whatever point and state you're currently at. It's going to save you at the checkpoint, that you were at last, which actually can work to your advantage sometimes, because sometimes you might be in a situation where you're halfway through an encounter and you realize, oh, I should have spent my upgrade points or switched my weapons or whatever, so that when you come back in at the beginning of the checkpoint, again, you get the opportunity to do that before starting the encounter over. So, sometimes that can work to your advantage. Since we are on a PC version, I should mention that the PC-specific options are a little light, especially with regard to graphics options. I mean, it's literally like vertical sync, gamma, and video resolution and full screen, and that is literally like all you got. Like at first when I saw the Y button there, I was like, oh, is this going to be, advanced video options? No, it's pretty much just, hey, here's all the libraries and stuff that we're using. All right, awesome. But, I've actually heard that they're thinking about expanding the video options in the PC version with a patch at some point. And I will say, I certainly don't think the game looks bad in general on PC. It looks, a lot like the first one did. And I don't really see that as a major problem. You can hear the difference. Like that's the Y weapon right now. So a little slower, a little more clobbery. The X weapon faster feel. And the right bumper to do some rolling and whatnot. So, I think I'm not going to talk too much more about this game in this video anyway. Like I said, I'm still pretty early on in it. I still haven't formed a final opinion about it. And I definitely don't want to make it seem as though I'm dumping on the game, because it just so happens that a lot of the things that showed up in this video are kind of emphasizing some of the problems that I've been finding with it. But, obviously I've played it for 3 hours. I'm enjoying it enough to keep coming back to it. It's frustrated me a little bit here and there, but it's still, I'm still interested in it. It's still holding my interest. I'm still, intent on continuing with it and finishing it at some point. It's just that, it's not really hooked me the way that the first one did. And, part of that could be that the first one was the first one. It was unique. It was something I hadn't seen before. People talk a lot about how much these games borrow from other games, and I personally don't think there's anything at all wrong with that. If you're going to borrow from other games, that's great. Just do a good job at it. Sure, like the traversal in this is a lot like Prince of Persia, or the combat in this is a lot like God of War, or the basic quest structure and game sort of vibe is a lot like Zelda. But that doesn't mean that this game doesn't bring its own unique, character and charm and mechanics and nuances to the table. So, I would say honestly, at this point with the game, if you haven't played the first Darksiders, I would highly recommend going and playing that game before playing this one, because I really feel like that game is great, and having played through it 1.5 times, I can highly recommend it without any kind of qualification. Like, it's not a perfect game, but it's a really good game. And I think that's an important thing to say in this case, is that I don't feel I've played enough of this game yet to judge it properly and say whether you should or shouldn't buy it. But I can say, without a doubt, especially, at the reduced price you often find it on, like it's on Steam sales all the time for like $5. And like for $5, you'd be crazy not to buy the first Darksiders. I think it's only even like $20 normally, which is still a very reasonable price for how good that game is. But I think I'm going to wrap this up. The other thing about showing a game like this is I really don't want to get into too much story stuff, because I don't want to spoil anything or ruin anything for people. I really just wanted to kind of talk about the game a little bit and give folks an idea of kind of what it's all about. And I think this has done that. And so, before I get into anything else too crazy, I think I'm going to stop this and do something else. So, Until next time.